We begin by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His infinite mercy, His blessing in allowing us to hold this ceremony of mourning and grief in honor of the Lady of Light, the lady who is known as the master of the women of heaven, Lady Fatima Zahra, salamullahi alayha. And I'm joined today by my respective guests, my fellow brothers, my fellow reciters, who will inshallah together, both ourselves and you watching at home, spread some of the words of this great lady, remember some great accounts from her holy life, although we mentioned at the outset we won't be able to do justice to her, whilst also delving into some of, and as I mentioned, some of her musibas and the tragedies that she had to face. Indeed, we find this lady is no ordinary lady. A daughter which is known as a rahmah, but she was no ordinary rahmah. She was the rahmah for the rahmat lil alameen, Rasulullah. When she came as a wife, she was no ordinary wife. Indeed, when you get married, you complete half of your deen. She was married to no other than Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, who is known as being from his head to his toe full of iman. When she came as a mother, she was no ordinary mother. Amongst her children were the likes of Imam Hassan and Hussein, who are known as Sayyid al-Shababi Ahl al-Jannah. And as it's been reported from the famous prophetic saying, heaven lies under the feet of your mother. And so the heaven of her two sons, Imam Hassan and Hussein, symbolically speaking, is underneath the feet of Lady Fatima. Without any further delay, I would like to welcome to the show my dear respected brother, Sayyid Abbas Farshuri. And I would like to ask the Sayyid to shed some light into the birth of this lady herself. Why was the birth of Lady Fatima so important for Islam in context of the time in which she was born?
Inshallah, first of all, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to all of the brothers who are here and to all of the listeners. These are at least the beginning of the nights of Fatimiyya, and it is almost like the reopening of a wound that has remained sometimes hidden or forgotten, but always painful when touched upon for the entire year. And Fatimiyya is really when you are reminded of your orphanhood, when your own mother has been taken from you. It is different to other riwayat, different shahadats in my own experience when it comes to Fatimiyya, because it feels much more imminent to yourself that you are suffering a personal tragedy in these nights, inshallah. Part of understanding why it's a tragedy is understanding who the personality is who has been taken from us.
Absolutely.
It's almost like the more that we know about who she is, the more terrible an event Fatimiyya looks like from those eyes. If a person looks at her purely as a political figure, as some do, or a social figure, or as one of many daughters of the Prophet, whatever lens they look at, they won't actually see what's happening. But the more ma'rifat you gain of this personality, the more you understand her greatness. And you could say there's actually no greater fada'il of her birth than that it was only after the Prophet visits the highest levels of heaven that she is born. We don't have a narration like this for any other individual, that when he's at the height of Mi'raj, when he's on that journey, going close and close and closer, أَوْ قَابَ قَوْسَيْنِ أَوْ أَدْنَى, until he was less than half a bow's length from wherever the liqa Allah actually means, meeting Allah. Like you could say the highest level of closeness to Allah's majesty. And naturally, no one has been there before. Nabi Isa only goes up 4 levels. Rasulullah goes up all of the levels. And when he's told to return, it's with these words: now when you go back to earth, go to the house of your wife Khadija. And we are told by our riwayat, it is on that night and 9 months after that night that she is even born in the first place. So the first fadail of her is, her birth is mubarak from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet cannot have a child like her until he's gone to heaven, which shows to you the origin of the soul that was born. It is not a soul of this world, it's a soul which belongs much further away from here. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that the soul of Sayyid Fatima alayhi salam is central to creation itself. And there was no way of her being born on this earth until that soul of hers had been accessed from the heavenly realms. In our riwayat, we have that, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates all of the world and the creation, at one point, there are different narrations about this. Some say that Allah creates one nur, that's Nur Muhammad, and that nur becomes 14, or that nur then becomes 2, Nur Ali, Nur Muhammad, these different things. And every so often there's a narration which says, then there's the nur of Fatima, which existed then as well. And certain things were made just from that nur. And normally, if it's an imam, it makes sense because it's an imam of Ahlul Bayt. So they have a certain set role by Allah, a certain defined purpose. She's not an imam in that sense of the Ithna Ashur. She's not a prophet. And yet why is she hujjah upon the imams and greater than the prophets? There is some, cosmic reality to her. So on the one hand, to answer your question, she's born only when the Prophet comes back from Mi'raj. On the second hand, her existence, her wujud, far precedes Arabia. And even when she speaks in her khutbah fadakiyah, which we'll come to later, she's speaking about things that she was not even born to witness. So clearly her soul has access to the realms of the earth before she was born in this day. But she's born, the Prophet comes back, she is then conceived and born in the house of Sayyidah Khadija alayha salam. And then you see the upbringing of a girl who is so great in her childhood. She's called Abiha when she's a child, not when she's an adult. We often think mother of her father is a title which comes to her later on in her life. No, it comes to her when she's literally a child. The Prophet sees the way this girl is growing up in his house, the way that she is tending and caring for him, that she is someone who reminds him of the way a mother treats their child, the mother of her father. But going back to the point I mentioned earlier, some scholars, I think it's Ayatollah Gulbegani, says Abiha also responds to the other point of her true origin. I don't know if we have time to go into detail, but when the word often means origin as well as mother, okay? And the scholars say, for example, sorry if I'm going too deep in the beginning, but we have to go. If you have, say, a father and a son, for example, who comes first, the father or the son? Well, the father comes first. But the father's not a father until he has a son. He's just a man. The son, when he's born, gives him the title of father. So even though the action comes after, it is the effect which determines what the cause is. Why do I say this now? The Prophet is calling to the Fatima the mother of her father. It doesn't just mean she cares for him like a mother. It means somehow in the Prophet, he's only the Prophet because she is Zahra. Because the origin is Abiha. You see what I'm saying? So Agha Gulbegani says, look backwards. There's something about her that's so great that he is saying she is the origin of some quality of mine as the Prophet. Now clearly, him being the father of Zahra is the Fadail. But what if there's more? What if there's other levels the Prophet reaches because of who his daughter is? And how great does his level reach, even though he's the Prophet, from when he comes back from Mi'raj? Because he's given something he didn't have when he went on that journey. And now he has it. The ajaza and the nur, which is in his loins, to give birth to this child for Sayyidah Khadija. So her birth is a Mubarak event, a blessed event. And her entire life, every year, keeps adding more fada'il. You could say we see more dimensions of the nur which was born on that day. That's how I would answer that question.
Certainly. With those words you've spoken, it's like we've also, I'm sure the brothers would agree, we've also been on like a mirage as well of our own. Sayyid, my next question then would be, just stemming from that, coming back to more of the social side, how were daughters treated in that time? And then in light of that, what gave Lady Fatima her importance, being a daughter? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have given Rasulullah another son.
Yeah.
But what's so important about him giving him, a daughter like this? And in light of the ayah we recited at the beginning, Surah Kawthar, this bounty, this never-ending blessing in Lady Fatima. What would your thoughts be there?
Yeah, so obviously the Prophet has sons who died quite early, Qasim and Ibrahim, and he mourns for them as well. But only one daughter who survives. Other ulama argue there may have been others, but one daughter in the personality of Sayyidah Zahra alayha salam, who survives his message and becomes the one who carries on the line of the Sayyids as well. It comes from her, not just from the Prophet. Actually, it comes from her in truth. It comes from the nur she has from the Holy Prophet, and Ali ibn Abi Talib has, with her. But about your question, at that time there were meager to little rights for women in general. We all know daughters were buried alive. بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قَتَلُوا, it would be asked, for what crime did they commit that they were buried in this way? Daughters had no property rights either. Girls and daughters could be inherited when their kafil had died. And indeed the rights of the mother were limited in that sense as well. Women played a very little social and political role in the running of the Kaaba, the khuddam of the Haram in that time. It was men, obviously. That was the nature of the time. In Sayyidah Fatima, what we see is the Prophet gives her certain responsibilities which she has in her life, which show us the potential of a woman. Okay? I'll give you an example. When the Prophet comes home, okay, ordinarily everyone stands when he enters into the room, but he stands when she enters into the room. Again, we don't see this for anyone, and I'm telling you, when you go to the books, the riwayat about her are almost like an exceptional tone. Like there's one rule for everything and one rule for Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. For example, Prophet does not stand for anyone. The trees bow for him when he walks. And when she walks in as a child, he stands for her. Which shows us at the very least the honor that's given to a child, not any child, but this child in particular. Okay. In the house, she tends and cares for him. When he comes back from Ta'if, after one of the most difficult times in his life, they say that, because we have some ayat of Quran revealed there as well, not just Makkah and Medina, but there as well. When he returns back and he was chased out of that town in the beginning of Islam, they had no ear for Islam whatsoever. When he comes home, and he is heartbroken at that time. There are times he is sad and the Quran recognizes his sadness. When he doesn't receive wahi for a number of days, we have Surah Ad-Duha, in which he is told, مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Your Lord has not abandoned you, He has not forsaken you. Same thing here, he comes back, he's heartbroken. And the one who consoles him is Sayyidah Zahra. She's a child. She consoles her father, encouraging him to keep going when he's faced a difficult moment in his life. When he has wounds on his body from the battlefield, she tends and clears those wounds that are on his body. So every time he is in need or in trouble, and Islam is in trouble, she's the one who is there to be taking an active role. So although we'll discuss more what the social political role is, look at the family role first of all, which is a lesson for our sisters, that she plays such an active role in the households that she is in. And she cares and tends and has that jamali love in her for her father. I think everyone can learn from this. Sons can learn from this. Wives, husbands can all learn from this. But she shows the softness of heart which belongs in the home. This was not recognized in Arabia at that time because of the dehumanization of women in general. And it's like the Prophet is showing it from the ground up. If you treat your children like this, your woman should be also treated like this as well. So when he treats women as well, his wives and other women, you see the same etiquette and adab he has. But the place we see it happening firsthand is in the life of his daughter and the way that she's treated. So you see in her gentleness, and you see that gentleness continue much more in the life of the Holy Prophet.
Thank you so much there, Sayyid. One final question for this part then, just focusing on the period of her birth up to, the few years, as you mentioned, helping Rasulullah when he's coming back with his wounds and, sort of encouraging him, being that catalyst to keep him going forward. How much time did Lady Fatima spend with her mother, Lady Khadija, is much known, and what influence did Lady Khadija have upon her daughter herself?
So Sayyidah Khadija of course dies in the year of Huzn, Ayam Huzn. Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam is born only a few years before that. So you could only say, I don't know the exact number, but not too many years in that time while she's in Mecca itself. So she doesn't have her mother with her when she is caring for the Prophet in this way later, because she has already died. Neither when she's getting married does she have her mother with her either, neither at the Hijrah. So the major milestones of her life happen without her mother. I'll give you an example of marriage, because everyone speaks about marriage and having your mother with you. Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, when she comes of age for marriage and it's time, she's obviously receiving proposals from her father and she's saying no to all of them. And she's of age and she is already renowned. The Arab poetry at that time already praises her before Islam has become, established in Medina. She's already being recognized and praised, and she has no mother with her to advise her on this period of time, and so she keeps saying no to those proposals. So the Prophet, of course, naturally goes to the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib and says to him, you are unmarried at the moment, and he posits it to him. Imam Ali famously says that I have no mahr with me. I have, what is the narration? I have a sword, a shield, and a horse. And the Prophet says, well, the horse you need for work, and you need it for when you go to war, as you do for the sword, but the shield you don't need. By the way, Ali doesn't need a shield when he fights. Well, there's not a single wound on his back anyway, and no one gets close in the front either. But still, he sells the shield, he gets the money for the mahr. Now, at this time, normally, a mother is the one who advises the child on accepting or rejecting a proposal. But that's not what happens because there's no mother. So when the Prophet says to her, what do you think of this proposal? In one of the most glorious moments of haya, of modesty, after she's always saying no, 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 for the first time she is just silent and she looks down modestly. And the Prophet says her silence signifies her approval at this marriage, which we never see her in any other way. And it's a lesson for us that, the humility that she has for her husband is respect, and then it's love as well. Like imagine when you hear the name of Ali has given you a proposal, and the shyness which overtakes her to not be able to even say yes out loud. Imagine how much love there is at that time. She says, okay, the Prophet then says, her silence and approval, it has been accepted. Now here's why I want to mention this narration now at this point. Prophet can then announce marriage, okay? And that's when a mother and the woman in Medina would go out or Makkah would announce someone's been married. He doesn't do that. He instead turns and says that my daughter Zahra has finally accepted someone to be her husband. But I will not tell you who it is. This night, the brightest star will descend and bow on one of the houses. And you will know whichever house on which it descends, that person has married my daughter. There's no Khadija to do this, there's no uncle. This is how God announces the marriage. Okay. Naturally that night, of all of the homes, some ulama say it was actually Venus. So it wasn't a star, but it was the lightest star in the Arabia. It goes out of its asterisk field and bows on the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now for me and you, this is not strange for us to hear, that the stars would come and bow to the house of Ali when all of creation bows to the house where Ali was born every day. It's not strange for us to hear this, but it bows. Just like 11 of them bowed to Yusuf, the greatest one bows to the one from whom Yusuf gets his beauty. There he is. Then everyone knows, well, Ali is the one who's going to marry Zahra. Again, when would a mother come in useful again? When the time comes for her wearing her dress to get married. Normally, it is the pride of a mother at that time to prepare the clothing and to prepare the girl while she goes towards her marriage. They say, Fatima alayhi salam is in her house and a newly stitched dress has been laid before her. Not by her mother, but by someone. Okay. Before she can go and wear it to go for her wedding, someone knocks on the door. There's a beggar, a woman asking for clothing without hesitating. Sayyidah Zahra takes that wedding dress of hers, goes outside and gifts it, and then wears a coarse woolen clothing to her own wedding. This shows she's been raised by a mother of honor. Because her mother's not there, but she has those same values of hilm and forbearance and charity in her to give to others before she gives to herself. What does she say? Ajjar thumma dar, the neighbors before ourselves, she says in her life later on. So we see in her the ideal daughter who has spent too long without a mother. But to recompense for that, she becomes the mother to all of the Imams. One of her titles is Aimma. Not just Ummul Hasanain, which is one as well. Aimma. Our sixth Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, one says to his companions, why do you say Zahra is just the mother of Hassan Hussein? She is all of our mother. She's mother to all of us. Don't restrict her to just those children. So in answer to your question, look at how she spends so limited time with her own mother. She becomes a mother for all of those children after her, and for us inshallah as well.
Inshallah. Thank you, dear Sayyid, once more. For this next part of the program, I would like to now request, who needs, by the way, no introduction, mashallah, he's very well known domestically and internationally, my dear brother Imran Datu, to please come forward and recite in honor of the Lady of Light, Lady Fatima. Just before you recite, brother, in regards to Lady Fatima, if you don't mind me asking, what does she mean to you?
Ahsant, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Firstly, assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters watching and everyone around as well. Sayyidah Zahra, salamu alayha, is a very, I think each individual has a very personal relation with her. And I think, I mean, what I will just share with you guys is something maybe others can also relate. When we need any sort of protection or anything like that, we look to our mother, especially when we're young. You know, when we have an issue at school, when we fell, Mom, I grazed my knee, Mom, I'm hungry, Mom, I'm thirsty, right? So we go to our mothers for protection. And so when we have, you know, we get older and we have trials and tribulations in life, like, you know, now we struggle. I personally look at Sayyidah Zahra, and she's all of our mothers. So, and this is one of the reasons this tasbih is so important, and it's known as the tasbih of Zahra. Carry it with you. And it offers you that protection of a mother. And a mother like Sayyidah Zahra. And just like Sayyid has just explained, her status, her, you know, the roots from Bibi Khadija, from Rasulullah, made her that mother, made her that person, that on her wedding day even she would give her dress away. And that's the type of mother you want protection from. So any troubles, you know, I mean, this is personally, when anything that goes on in my life, even before I recite, you know, it's Bibi Fatima Zahra, I will cry to, you know, please, with your tawassul, with your wasila, you know, allow this to be accepted. So I think this is what she means to me. You know, it's everything, you know, and through life, she's that mother that you go to for protection. So inshallah. So as we are commemorating the nights of Fatimiyya, I'll recite a marsiya in Urdu with your permission, inshallah. Please recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، ماں آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں، شبر و شبیر دیتے تھے یہ رو رو کے صدا، ماں آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں. So the concept of this poem is where Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein and the children of Zahra, they come into the house after she passes away and they scream and they cry as anyone would for their mother. Mother, where are you? Where have you gone? Where have you left us? کہ ہے جہاں پر آپ ہم کو بھی بلا لیجئے وہیں، آپ کی فرقت میں دل کو چین اب آتا نہیں، یاد ہم کو آ رہی ہے آپ کی بے انتہا، آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں. اور دل پھٹا جاتا ہے ہم کیسے بھلائے آپ کو، ایک بار آ کر تو اماں حال میرا دیکھ لو، آنکھ سے آنسو رواں ہے، دل تڑپتا ہے میرا، ماں آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں. ہائے رو رو کے حسن بولے بھلا نہ پاؤں گا، قبر پر نانا کی جا کر بات یہ بتلاؤں گا، ہر سامنے میرے تماچا آپ کو مارا گیا، ماں آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں. جب تلک زندہ ہے ہم کو خون رلائے گا یہ غم، آپ کا دربار میں جانا نہیں بھولیں گے ہم، کر دیا امت نے ہائے آپ کو ہم سے جدا، ماں آپ ہے کہاں، ماں آپ ہے کہاں، آپ ہے کہاں. اور سن کے نوحہ اشک بار لے ازا ہونے لگے، قبر میں حسنین ماں کی یاد میں رونے لگے، جس گھڑی ذیشان اور عمران نے نوحہ پڑھا، ماں
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
Ahsant, very beautifully recited, dear brother Imran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala further bless you and increase your tawfiq, inshallah. In the similar vein, I would like to now request my dear brother, who again needs no introduction, mashallah, is very well known both domestically and internationally, our dear respected brother Rashid Haider. Dear brother, before I ask you to recite, regarding Lady Fatima and reciting for her, simple question, why? Why for Lady Fatima?
Yeah, I think when you obviously look at the Masa'ib of Sayyidah Fatima to Zahra, of course it's not something easy to listen to, it's not something that you can just sit there and be like, okay, and just continue on with your day. I think similar to what Brother Imran was saying about, we look to her as like a mother, we look to her for our comfort, for peace, and I think when you recite for her, it's very different to if you're reciting for someone else, because obviously looking at different types of poetry, speaking about what happened to her, for example, with the door and so on. It's not an easy masa'ib where you can just sit there and just listen to just like that. It's a very, very deep thing, and I think for me it's just something very, very dear to me. Yeah.
And before you recite, if you could also introduce your eulogy or your words of lamentation for this great lady.
Of course, yes. So what I'd like to recite is a latmiya where it speaks about Muhsin, and essentially kind of when we look at the perspective from Muhsin, maybe what he heard, what he felt, what he saw. So yeah, that's what my latmiya will be about today. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala
Fatima, mother, now I don't suffer. I sleep in heaven, I miss your presence. I sleep in heaven, I miss your presence. Fatima, mother, now I don't suffer. I sleep in heaven, I miss your presence. I sleep in heaven, I miss your presence. My mother, I was taken from you too early. There was nobody for you to even bury. I could hear screams as the nail pierced your body. I could feel the nail pierce through my small body. Why does your womb squeeze? Why can I not breathe? Why does your womb squeeze? Why can I not breathe? What is this sharp pain? Will I now be slain? What is this sharp pain? Will I now be slain? Fatima, mother, now I don't suffer. Fatima, mother, now I don't suffer. I sleep in heaven, I miss your presence. I sleep in heaven, I miss your presence. Why could I hear flames that would torment a baby? I could smell smoke that would suffocate a baby. Tell me, mother, why can't I hear them shout loudly? This was the house where your father would speak softly. Why did they not care that we were both there? Why did they not care that we were both there? What crime did we do to
to deserve this pain? What crime did we do to deserve this pain? Fatima, mother, now I don't suffer. I sleep in heaven. I miss your presence. I sleep in heaven. I miss your presence. My son, don't worry, you have now entered heaven. Your pain lasted a long time, it was not pleasant. I was robbed of the chance to see my small baby. We enter heaven like youth, so I think maybe when I join you, son, I can see your face. When I join you, son, I can see your face. Do you have fathers, young beautiful face? Do you have fathers, young beautiful face? Fatima, mother, now I don't suffer. Fatima, mother, now I don't suffer. I sleep in heaven. I miss your presence. I sleep in heaven. I miss your presence. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Inshallah. Thank you so much there, brother. That was very beautifully recited. I don't know about the brothers, but me personally speaking, that's probably the first latam, you could say, I've heard where it's speaking just directly from the viewpoint of Hazrat Mohsin. Because traditionally speaking, when you speak to fellow brothers and family members and even the youth, and you ask them, who do you think is the youngest person killed from the Ahlul Bayt and the family? First person that comes to mind is Abdullah Radhi or Ali Asghar alayhi salam in Karbala. But we tend to forget that, on the day when Lady Fatima was killed, there was someone who was even younger than Ali Asghar, who didn't even come into this world, so to speak, physically. It was Mohsin alayhi salam. Thank you once more, dear brother. I would now like to request my brother Sayyid Misam Ali, who again is very well known. He needs no introduction, especially from someone like me, to recite again some words of, you could say, tragedy, some heartfelt words in honor of Lady Fatima. And again, similarly, dear brother, before you even begin reciting, I wanted to ask you what Lady Fatima or the Ayam of Fatimiyya in general means to you.
First and foremost, assalamu alaikum to all the brothers and to all of those who are watching. Lady Fatima assalamu alayha signifies a lot of different things for me personally. So within the Ahlul Bayt, I'm sure the brothers might agree with me that obviously within the Ahlul Bayt there are many personalities who we are attached with. Well, every single personality who we are very closely attached with. However, there are some personalities who we resonate with more, who we have a bit more of a connection with than others, perhaps in some situations, or maybe it's a phase of life that we're going through that makes us relate to those. And Lady Fatima is one of those two personalities for me that I resonate with. I do a lot of tawassul with in my own private life for various different difficulties or times of need that I'm in. So to be able to recite the Masahib and the Fadail of Lady Fatima it's a very big honor for me, and something that I'm not worthy of at all. It's the grace of Allah and Ali Muhammad. The fact that we are able to recite their praises and recite their tragedies, alhamdulillah.
Today, if you can just give us a brief introduction of what you're reciting, what it depicts, and how it relates to Lady Fatima.
Sure. So the kalam that I had thought about reciting again is relating to what Brother Rashid just recited about Hazrat Mohsin alayhi salam. So Brother Rashid recited from the viewpoint of Hazrat Mohsin alayhi salam. So the kalam I'm going to be reciting is from Bibi Fatima salam alayha's point of view. So it's from the viewpoint where a mother has just lost her unborn child and what pains and what emotions she must be feeling at the time. So just in regards to that 4 or 5 verses, inshallah, of Masahib. But Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. بار دیگر نعرہ صلوات. دیوار و در کے بیچ یہ کہتی تھی سیدہ محسن نہیں رہا میرا، محسن نہیں رہا. دیوار و در کے بیچ یہ کہتی تھی سیدہ محسن نہیں رہا میرا، محسن نہیں رہا. مشکل کشا کی زوجہ کی فیضا مدد کو آ، محسن نہیں رہا میرا، محسن نہیں رہا. ایک ماں کے واسطے یہ قیامت سے کم نہیں، ان ٹوٹی پسلیوں کا مجھے کوئی غم نہیں. غم ہے بس ایک یہی میرے دل کو جو کھا گیا، محسن نہیں رہا میرا، محسن نہیں رہا. دنیا میں اس کے آنے کا ارمان رہ گیا، صورت سے ماں کی بیٹا بھی انجان رہ گیا. سہ پائے کس طرح سے یہ ایک ماں کی ممتا، محسن نہیں رہا میرا، محسن نہیں رہا. محسن کے واسطے تھی جو دل میں میرے نہاں، عباس کو سنانا وہ تم ساری لوریاں، ہونٹوں پہ اب رہے گا میرے بس یہ مرثیہ، محسن نہیں رہا میرا، محسن نہیں رہا. جانے سے اس کے رہ گئی دل میں یہ ایک کسک، آواز سننا پاؤں گی اس کی میں حشر تک. حسرت کے اپنی ماں کو وہ ماں بھی نہ کہہ سکا، محسن نہیں رہا میرا، محسن نہیں رہا. ننھے سے تن میں کیل جو پیوست ہو گئی، رنگت نے اس کی لکھی ہے تحریر ظلم کی. دیوار پر اسی کا لہو ہے لگا ہوا، محسن نہیں رہا میرا، محسن نہیں رہا. میسم یہ کہہ کے ہو گئی خاموش فاطمہ، اٹھے گا میرے لال سے پردہ جو غیب کا،
इस बात का वो आते ही बदला चुकाएगा मोह से नहीं रहा मेरा मोह से नहीं रहा मोह से नहीं रहा मेरा मोह से नहीं रहा बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil. Ahsant, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, dear brother. Struggling to even find words for that recitation. Just to bear in mind what not only Lady Fatima, but what Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allah bless all of the poets who write for Ahlul Bayt and all the reciters to recite, because it is not easy to mention these masaib and it takes a lot on your soul to do so. So God bless you for your efforts, and may Allah extend all of your journeys in recitation and dhikr. There's a special place in heaven for the zakir of Ahlul Bayt as well. And many of the ulama would say that, often the scholars envy how close in proximity the Madhi Khan and Nawha Khans are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of this act they have done. One scholar once mentions that he saw another alim in a dream and they were waiting to queue into Jannah. And the queue was so wide and lengthy, the queue was so long, no one could enter. It was called Baba Sadiq for the ulama. And they turned and saw another door of heaven in which everyone was entering freely and quickly. So the alim turned and saw one of his friends entering that same gate and said, well, I'm a scholar like you, why are you entering to heaven before me? And the other scholar replied, although you were an alim and a teacher, I used to read the Masibah and the tragedy of Ahlul Bayt as well. Because of this one action, a door called Bab al-Hussein has opened, and I have the honor of entering inside alongside the Azadar of Ahlul Bayt. So all of you who are reciting Noha and Marsiya and Musibah, may Allah bless you, and you should know that every word that you say, you are slowly opening up a door of heaven for you, inshallah.
Inshallah. As Brother Abbas just mentioned as well, it's like a special tawfiq that certain individuals are selected with that voice, that personality, that demeanor to carry on with their service. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase all of your services, inshallah. Dear Sayyid, now for the next section I want to focus upon, so we've mentioned up to Lady Fatima's marriage with Imam Ali, to her life up to that period. Now she's married, she has Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, Lady Zainab, Lady Kulthum. How does she manage her life? She's praying at the same time, she's taking care of their well-being. How does she do it all?
It is famously known that Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam would have dars in her house, in which women would come and they would study and they would learn the Quran and the meaning from her. One of those who famously is Hind, who goes on to marry Yazid, who would later remark in Sham that, I had learned to wear the hijab from Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. I had learned from those houses in Medina how to, practice this religion. So she has that important social role. You also find her, like you mentioned, as a mother as well. The reason why I mention it in this priority is because Ali Shariati famously says that, Fatima is Fatima. And if you take her away from just being a daughter and a wife and a mother, you actually see her personality devoid of her social relationships. And there is where she becomes so interesting. On the one hand, she is an ardent worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In her day she prays and fasts, and in her night she is an ibadah as well. And there are certain du'as, ad'iyah associated to her which are again unique. The tasbih, for example, is a unique practice. Okay, on the other hand, she's also an expert in matters of fiqh and tafsir. Many times she explains the meaning of verses of Quran in those durus and the meaning of why we have certain actions. If you recall in her khutbah in Fadak, at one point she mentions, what was the point of all of this religion? Like, why did we have it? She goes, Allah established prayer so that you may have this humility in your heart. There is khums so that you may learn to appropriate. Like, there are reasons for all of those actions which come. And she's almost opening up that dimension underneath of why do we have so many laws in Islam. She can explain them and record them fluently when she is speaking. So on the one hand, she is an ardent worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the other hand, she's an expert in those matters. On the third hand, she is a mother and a wife and a daughter, and all of those responsibilities she completes in the utmost level of perfection. And furthermore, she plays an active social role as well. and a political role, as will come later in her life. And so just remark for a moment on how one person can be so many things. Like on the one hand, she is the height of worship, and she is the height of intellectual ability, and she is the most perfect embodiment of what a woman should be in her relationships, and she is playing an active role in her society and the time that she lives in. That's one of the miracles that she has, you know. You mentioned about her children as well. You know, I want to take a look at it in a different way. On the one hand, you could say, look at how she raises Hassanain, look how she raises Kulthum and Sayyida Zainab. But have you ever remarked about how Sayyida Fatima calls Abu Fadl Abbas her own son? She dies before he is born. She does not witness him, but she refers to him as Ibn al-Abbas, my son Abbas. I think our sixth Imam also mentions that, you know, Sayyida Fatima alayhi salam, she regards our uncle Abbas as her own son. I want to mention this now because you are seeing a holistic human being here. Like, she's not just someone who takes in her own children as her own, she takes in other mothers' children as her own children. I want to mention a hadith of her about Abu Fadl Abbas. Before I do, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but do any of you have any kalam of Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam you could read, any couplets or any lines? If any of you do, please do read, inshallah. Misam, I don't know if you have any, or Imran or Rashid. The reason why I'll mention after, but I really want to make this point clear, so if you could hear some praise or some musibah of Abu Fadl Abbas, we'll see a beautiful link between him and Sayyida Fatima alayhi salam, inshallah.
Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah.
I say Musaddas Kalam, and it talks about Bibi Fatima calling Hazrat Abbas her son. So it's a manqabat as well, so inshallah it's appropriate to what Sayyidi saying. So with your permission, inshallah, for Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, salawat. Abbas Karbala ki zarurat hai dosto, Abbas Karbala ki zarurat hai dosto, Abbas Murtaza ki riyazat hai dosto, Abbas Anbiya ki karamat hai dosto, Abbas Zulfiqar imamat hai dosto, Abbas jaisa koi नहीं इस जहान में, मौला हुसैन रहते हैं इसकी अमान में, मौला हुसैन रहते हैं इसकी अमान में. और इस बात पर तवज्जो कि कोई बयान कैसे करे इसका मर्तबा, इसको सलाम करता है मरियम का लाडला. अब्बास खुद है तीसरा बेटा बतूल का, ये राज आज तक न ज़माना समझ सका. बेटा इसे बतूल ने यूं भी बनाया है, मोहसिन के बदले दहर में अब्बास आया है, मोहसिन के बदले दहर में अब्बास आया है, मोहसिन के बदले दहर में अब्बास आया है. पर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah. MashaAllah.
So to be honest, that was a beautiful recitation. In fact, before I mention my point, it reminded me of a few ash'ar myself. के अर्ज़ है कि मौजज़ाए प्यास का देखा दर अब्बास पर. For those who don't know Urdu, I'll translate that. I saw the miracle of thirst at the door of Abbas. मौजज़ाए प्यास का देखा दर अब्बास पर, सजदा करने आया दरिया दर अब्बास पर. I saw that the river came to prostrate at the door of Abbas. That's the miracle that I saw. Then the poet says, क्या खबर कितनी अज़मत इस दर अब्बास की. क्या खबर, who knows how great this door of Abbas is. क्या खबर कितनी अज़मत इस दर अब्बास की, बांटती है नेमते ज़हरा दर अब्बास पर. Zahra herself gives out ni'mah, blessing from this door of Abbas. So I remember those verses when you said them. Here's why we just did this right now. Alhamdulillah, Imran, you made a beautiful moment just there with that recitation. They say in the narrations that when Sayyid Fatima alayhi salam is going to the maqam of shafa'ah, when all those whom are interceding on their behalf, when she's taking all them towards Jannah, the narrations tell us the angels of heaven will say, stop. To Amir al-Mu'mineen, that Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you are bringing a large crowd into heaven with you. What do you give as compensation or as a gift to allow this large a crowd into heaven? He turns to Sayyid Fatima alayhi salam and he asks her this question. Oh Fatima, I have just been asked by the malaika, what do you give at this maqam shafa'at, in order for us to enter heaven with all of these people who are coming in with you? She answers by saying those lines that Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, كفانا العجل في هذا المقام اليدان المقطوعتان من ابن العباس. It's enough at this stage to have all of these shafa'at of all those who enter, these two arms of my son Abbas. This is the narration, a sahih narration that we have. It's enough. For all those people who come through Dar Abbas, it's enough that I will, and the narration actually says she will hold up those two hands of Abbas and say, I give the arms of Ibn al-Abbas, my son Abbas. That's when she calls him my son. I give my own son's arms for this reason. Open the doors of heaven now for the Azadara entering behind them. When you see, you know why this is so close to me? You know, all of you think about this for a moment, yeah? Fadl Abbas, all his life he acts like a yatim. He acts like an orphan. In what you can almost see he looks at himself in this way. You know, when he sees himself as separate in serving the women of Ahlul Bayt, he sees himself as being a servant. He won't even call them brother or sister. He literally calls them, oh master, oh lady. He won't use their names. He sees himself as so different to all of them, okay? He says those lines, you know, they are the sons of Rasulullah, I'm the son of Ali, it's the job of the hands to protect the eyes. These kind of narrations. He sees himself as different the whole time. On one narration, Sayyidah Zainab has to remind him when he's leaving, Abbas, you are my brother. When he's going to the maqtal, remember, you are my brother. She's reminding him because his whole mindset is, I'm a yatim, I'm an orphan, okay? Even in that last moment when Abu Abdullah is holding him, he says, call me brother once. That's his whole lifetime. Have you remarked on this? His whole life, he treats himself like a yatim. But in Akhirah, Zahra calls him her son. He sees himself like this, as something that he is less than them. But he's accepted by the mother herself that you are my son. Is there a greater honor than this? And I often wonder about whether he looked at it like this or not. Like, did he see himself as someone who belonged to Bani Hashim or only in service of them? However his last moments were, after he died, no doubt Zahra herself would have accepted him and called him my son. And then maybe he would have realized what it was all for. All of that khidmah and service, he would have known he was always the son of Ahlul Bayt. But it took him all of those imtihanat to realize that he belonged to that level. And I don't know if he ever addressed himself like this before, but Zahra says, you are my son. So in her lifetime we see someone who makes herself a mother for every one who has been outcasted or sent away or sees themselves as small. Zahra sees them as large and takes them for herself. That's who Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam is.
Thank you, subhanAllah, ahsant there, brother. Thank you for shedding that interesting light into Lady Fatima and her children, and including Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, who we don't usually tend to associate with Lady Fatima, generally speaking. Yeah. Thank you so much. I would like to request now my dear brother Rashid Haider to come forward and recite again in honor of Lady Fatima. We welcome you with the loud salawat once more. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ala.
Of course, as we know, one of the biggest secrets to this day is where the grave of Fatima Zahra is. And many of us yearn to do ziyarah of her grave. We know a few places where she may be buried, but of course that's still a secret till. But yeah, inshallah, the noha that I'd like to recite is in honor of Fatima Zahra, but more specifically speaking about where her grave is, but from the perspective of Sayyidah Zainab.
Bismillah.
Where is your grave, Mother Zahra? Where are you sleeping? My heart is asking, oh Mother, my heart is asking, oh and for you I so much care. You left me and I'm in pain, and life can be so unfair. For your grave I am searching, on the ground my eyes will stare. For your grave I am searching, on the ground my eyes will stare. For your grave my heart is searching, where are you sleeping? My heart is asking, oh mother, my heart is asking. Tonight is the night that you fell, with pain and sorrow I say. You left me to fight my grief, crying is the only way. Where are you, Mother Zahra? You left me and went away. Where are you, Mother Zahra? You left me and went away. With sadness my voice is shouting, where are you sleeping? My heart is asking, oh mother, my heart is asking. Where is your grave, Mother Zahra? Where are you sleeping? My heart is asking, oh mother, my heart is asking. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Wa ali Muhammad. Ahsan. Beautifully recited there, brother. It really sheds light on the fact that, you know, how hard it must have been for a young girl in the, you know, form of Lady Zainab, 4 or 5 years of age, to lose such a big figure in her life. Which, bringing it back to what Sayyid mentioned earlier, it's similar to the sort of age that Lady Fatima lost her mother, Lady Khadija. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala further increase your tawfiq. Thank you so much there, brother.
You know what this reminded me, if I can add, you know, you're right, at the time at least, maybe less so now, no one knew where she was buried. We have narrations now and some ulama are quite certain. But at that time no one knew where the buried, in purpose, because Fatima alayhi salam had in her wasiyah that those who oppressed her should not visit her grave. You know, Imam Ali alayhi salam, we speak a lot about him and his patience during that time, him being Asadullah and all of these things. But there's actually one moment where you see for a moment that line of God come out throughout all of these patients. He had told the Prophet, I'll be so patient, patience will tire of my patience. I was told by you and I will be so. One moment is on this matter, when after she has been martyred, the enemy it is known that they were not able to visit her grave. So they say, we want to find out where the body is. Ali refuses to tell them where he buried her during the night. So they say, in that case, we will go to the areas we think it is and we'll exhume the body ourselves to know where she is buried. Ali turns. I think he puts his hand on Zulfiqar, or he turns in the pose of a warrior and says, I have been patient. But if you even go as close to touch one of the areas on the ground where you think she is buried, I will wet the rivers, I will wet the towns and the streets with rivers of your blood. So for the first time, you see him showing that side of him, that I have been patient, but if you even dare to look for where I have buried Zahra, no one will stop Zulfiqar on this night, for no one should know where she is buried. So we do see Ali ibn Abi Talib being that warrior when it comes to protecting his most beloved wife in that moment. And so that recitation reminded me not only of the sadness that we have in not being able to visit her ziyarah, but in the fact that that jalal of Ali is found in Zainab as well. That when she's speaking and giving that khutbah in Kufa, a man who is blind, who can't see and can just hear, says that it sounded like Ali was speaking, but it was Zainab. And you see that through the martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatima, that fire and that energy and that power of Ahlul Bayt remains alive through her musibah, through all of those suffering. And it survives today as well in the heartbeat of every Shia who refuses to bow down to oppression, all because of that heartbeat, that difficulty. So we pray we can all one day in Medina do ziyarah of Sayyidah Zahra alayhi salam and do majlis there inshallah and raise the flag of Imam Zaman alayhi salam on the qabr of Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. Inshallah.
May Allah allow us one day to commemorate Ayam Fatima whilst this is all happening in Medina.
Inshallah. What a beautiful dua, inshallah.
My dear brother Sayyid Meeson, I'd like to request you to please come forward and recite your Marsiya Noha. We welcome you once more with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
So this kalam is, as you mentioned, about Imam Ali alayhi salam and his bravery. So this is Imam Ali alayhi salam reciting the Masahib on the grave of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about what he witnessed happen to Bibi Sayyidah salam alayha.
سپرد خاک جو حیدر نے فاطمہ کو کیا تو پھر مزار پیمبر پہ کیے جا کے بکا میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی ہر ایک گام پہ امت اسے ستاتی رہی میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی در بطول گرا تھا بطول پہ جس دن شکستہ پہلو سے تکلیف میں وہ تھی لیکن ہر ایک آہ میں موصل کا غم اٹھاتی رہی میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی گلے میں ڈالے رسن مجھ کو لے چلے جو شقی بچانے زہرا کو آگے نہیں بڑھا کوئی مدد کے واسطے فضا کو وہ بلاتی رہی میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی فیدک کا درد نہ تھا اس کو بس یہ خدشہ تھا مدینے والے ناحق بھول جائیں حیدر کا غدیر یاد ہر ایک کو وہ یوں دلاتی رہی میں کیا بتاؤں جو ستم اٹھاتی رہی، وہ جن کو آپ شب و روز چوما کرتے تھے، نشان ہے انہی ہاتھوں پہ تازیانوں کے، میری نظر سے وہ یہ زخم بھی چھپاتی رہی، میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی، علی ہوں شیر خدا ہوں مگر میں سہ نہ سکا، جو وقت غسل نظر آیا پہلوئے زہرا، قضا بھی ہچکیاں لے لے کے روتی جاتی رہی، میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی، ہاں میں نے دیکھا ہے رخ پر نشان تماچے کا، مگر یہ راز ہے کیا جب تلک رہی زندہ، حسن کی نظروں سے چہرے کو کیوں چھپاتی رہی، میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی، میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی، یہ کہہ کے رک گئے میسم نہ جانے کیوں مولا، ملال یہ ہے مجھے میں اسے بچا نہ سکا، جو درے کھا کے لئی سے مجھے بچاتی رہی، میں کیا بتاؤں جو زہرا ستم اٹھاتی رہی، بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات
اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد. Ahsant. Beautifully recited and written by yourself, dear brother. Just for the sake of our viewers, if you could, I know there's a lot in there, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of the tragedy you've composed in that Marsiya. Could you just give us a gist of what you were covering in that kalam?
So the kalam from a holistic perspective of Imam Ali alayhi salam going to the grave of the Holy Prophet and narrating the Messiah that he saw happened to Bibi Sayyidah Salamun alayha. For example, the falling of the door on her, the passing of Muhsin alayhi salam, the marks on her hands, on her arms of being whipped, the mark on her face of being slapped. So all of those, Imam Ali alayhi salam is narrating that to the grave of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you left me with your daughter and this is what's happened to her after your passing.
Beautifully recited and written as mentioned. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase your service and accept your service as well. Dear Sayyid, in light of what our brother Sayyid Nisam has recited for us, we find there are differing narrations on Lady Fatima's martyrdom itself. Why is that so?
Yeah, so this is an issue of the riwayat and the ahadith. Often there are 3 days that are posited, but 2 are considered more authentic. The one which is of 75 days, the one which is of 90 days. But there's a narration which says that she died 40 days after the Holy Prophet was killed, which has passed, I think, 2-3 weeks ago anyway. Now, the reason why they are different on this occasion is quite interesting. Although right now the number for 7 for 7 and for 7 and for 9 tis'a are different. In the ancient Kufic script, they looked more similar. So in the text, some ulama literally read it and thought it meant 75 or 70. Others read it and thought it meant 90. So that's why you have the one of Jumad al-Akhir or Jumad al-Awwal for this reason, that because they aren't sure if it's 70 or 75 or of 90. The second narration would be, I think, tomorrow. Tomorrow is the main day. And the third narration would be something about 27th of December. And it's only because of that difference in the reading of the manuscript that you have those two. Now the narration of 40 is a whole different ahadith altogether, but because this one's more authentic and it is mentioned more times, this is what is preferred. Add them together, you have 3 riwayat. 40 days after the death of the Holy Prophet, 75 days after, and 90 days after. And that's how we have them all. Ayatollah Wahid Khurasani mentions that there's wisdom in this, and the wisdom is that you have a longer period of time to do Fatimiyya. He once says that, people try to do for 1 day or for 3 days. He says there should be 40 days of Fatimiyya, from the first until the last one, and all of those should be treated the same as it is for Ashura. One of our scholars, Ayatollah Gulpaygani, also says that Fatimiyya is Ashura, is just like Ashura. So just like you have a period of mourning for the days of Abu Abdullah, have a period of mourning for Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. And the brothers here are going to be busy reading majalis in different places, as are you and myself doing Zakri, because this is the time for Fatimiyya. This is the time to mourn for this family. It's not 1 day or 2 days or one program. It is an entire period of time. Hatta is a whole year that we mourn for this family. But these days, this period of time, this block in particular, is devoted entirely to Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam and her son Muhsin, who was shaheed in these days as well.
And I believe my brothers will also agree here that even if we spent perhaps our whole lives mourning for just one aspect of her grievance or her martyrdom, it would never be enough in and of itself. With this in mind, dear brother, I would like to request you to recite some of the Masaib of this great lady and shed some lights. Some of our viewers here today may have just switched the TV on or switched it online and have come across this great lady who they've heard of here and there. If you could just shed some light into her uprising and as well as her musibah.
Definitely. These are the days and the nights of Fatimiyya, and the Shahada of Sayyid Fatima alayhi salam is that night and those nights when she would lie in her bed bidding farewell to her family. One by one she calls members of her family and says goodbye to them. Her sons, her husband, those who served alongside her, under her. And this follows a period of time where she has been mourning so intensely for her father that she has to move from her home just to handle the grief that she has had from the passing of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Bayt al-Ahzan, the house of grief. And now she lies mourning, and it is a difficult period for all of Ahlul Bayt. Imam Ali is going to lose his closest confidant and his closest partner, the only person he could share with. He would say later on in his life that she was the one who understood me and knew me, and now that he has lost it in those days. Our Imams would live their lives without a mother in this same way. And this is the one whom angels would come and communicate with. Now that one who they spoke, that Muhadditha, is going to be buried in the middle of the night in a grave where her lovers cannot go and do ziyarah for her. So it's most definitely a difficult night for all of us. They say during the period before that, a traveller comes to Medina and he enters into the front gate, goes into Medina, and he sees that it seems like someone is cooking. There is an oven on, and there is the smell of food, of charcoal that is coming to him. So the man turns and says that Rasulullah has just died in this land. This is no time for feasts, for making food. We should all be in mourning at that time. Shame on you, ya Ahl Medina, for what you are doing so soon after the death of the Holy Prophet, that you are eating and being merry. Where is this noise coming from, this smell coming from? And someone says to him, this is no feast. You are smelling and seeing the house of Zahra burning. Those flames that you see are not from ovens. That's the wood of the house of Fatima set aflame in the night in Medina. And that smell that you think you can smell is not food. This is the smell of the wood of that house burning, which Jibreel would wait before entering. If he had gone further, he would see a sight of Qiyamah. What would he see? He'd see in front of the house of Zahra alayhi salam, no doubt the house itself was burning, and the walls and the doors. And in front there is a mob of men shouting at the daughter of Rasulullah. Each one of them with vile language towards her, who is Kawthar, her who is Batul, her who is Ummul Aimma. And as they are there shouting, beside them there is one man who is Madhloom watching his wife inside. Some ulama say Ali ibn Abi Talib was restrained by ropes. Others say that he was just held back. But imagine Ali watching these men walking towards the house of Zahra. Before it's burnt, they would say, Zahra, come out or we'll burn this house. And she would then say, do you not know I am the daughter of Rasulullah who is in this house? And they would say, so what? Come out and give bayat to our leader. In those days, the man would see the house burning. If he had gone further, what would he have seen? He would have seen that as the house was burning, from the inside, Imam Hassan and Hussein narrate this as children. Imam Hassan says, we were in this house, and I could see as the house was burning, my mother Zahra goes towards the door. From the outside, a man was trying to enter. My mother threw herself at the door to not let him inside, until when I could see she was struggling to hold the door back, he must have kicked the door, for I saw her fall back against the wall. So the narration then says from Imam Hassan himself that I could see my own mother fall to the ground. Not only he's watching, Abu Abdullah is watching as well. Imam al-Hussein is watching this. So when you mourn for Abu Abdullah in Karbala, remember Imam Hussein alayhi salam is Madhloom. He's also yatim on the day of Ashura. And he has seen his mother in this most difficult state. Do you know where we see the parallels between those of them? In Medina, the narrations tell us when Zahra is behind that door, when that Mal'oon kicks the door, she falls back against the wall and she is crushed between the wall and the door. We don't know when exactly her ribs are broken. We don't know when they're broken. Some say that as she falls back against the wall, the force punctures her ribs behind her. Some say that when the door is forced and she is squeezed in between them, that's when. Some scholars say what? It wasn't then. It was when the enemy walked in and struck her again that she fell to the ground. It was the force of that striking which made that rib break. Now come to Karbala. Abu Abdullah, who saw this, is now lying on the plains of Karbala. His body is motionless, he's not moving. While he's not moving, they say Sayyidah Zainab runs from Tilla Zainabiyya and says, oh my brother Abu Abdullah, if you are alive, please tell me, let me know you are living. Hussein does not move at this time. Then Zainab says, for the sake of our grandfather Rasulullah, tell me if you are alive, I need to know. Hussein does not move. How? They say his body is somehow in between the arrows and the desert of Karbala. He's still lying there. Then she says, for the sake of our father Ali, who was killed while he was in the Masjid of Kufa, he was struck. Abu Abdullah, if you're alive, tell me. He does not answer again. Then she says, oh my brother Abu Abdullah, for the sake of our brother Hassan, you and I sat and pulled each arrow from his body. If you are alive, tell me. Hussein does not speak. But then she says, Ya Abu Abdullah, for the sake of the broken ribs of our mother Zahra, which you witnessed, if you are alive, tell me. At that time, Hussein tries to stand and says, there is no life left in my body, but no one should mention my mother Zahra and the broken rib which I saw, and I remained silent at this time. So he remembers at that time that rib that was broken. Then what's the other parallel? In Medina, they say that when that door pushes against the wall, Zahra falls to the ground. They say Fizza runs towards Fatima then says, Fizza, be gentle. Why? Because there was a nail in that door and I can feel a wound in my womb. I think my son Mohsin has been shaheed at this moment. She says it then. Wow, she's holding her own womb saying, I think my son has been killed. Now come to Karbala. There's a father holding his 6-month-old child. He holds this boy. There is blood coming from a face that has just smiled when a 3-pronged arrow entered into his neck. So they say, Hussein says, he took the blood from his child. Zahra holds her child. Hussein holds his child. And she says, Abu Abdullah says, he took the blood. He tries to throw the blood onto the ground. But the ground says, Ya Hussein, this blood that has been shed is innocent, ma'soom blood. If any of this blood comes on this ground, no plant
The sky says, oh Hussein, this is the blood of your ma'soom son. If any drop of that blood comes to the sky, no rain will fall again from me. So this madloom father takes the blood of his 6-month-old and throws it on his own beard. He turns and says, Ya Allah, I will be raised with the blood of Ali Asghar on my beard when I see you. How madloom is this family? In Medina, a mother holds her womb for her son, but in Karbala, a father has to bury his son in the desert with a qabr made from his sword. There's one more way where they're similar, and here's where the last thing I'll mention. In Medina, they say that when Sayyidah Zahra alayhi salam falls to the ground, the first noise she mentions, what does she say? She did not say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. She did not say, the first words are not, oh my sons, come to me. The narration tells us, when Zahra falls on the ground from the wounds that has been inflicted on her, the first word she says is, Ya Mehdi, oh my son Mehdi. That's what she said at that time. Meaning, in her most difficult moment, the one she remembers is her son, the Imam who will avenge her. Now come to Karbala. Hussein is lying there. Shimr is walking towards him. There are wounds and bruises on all parts of his body. As Shimr walks towards him, Hussein says, on this day I have been killed by those same people who struck my mother in Medina. And then he says those heartbreaking words, that although I'm about to be killed, my blood won't rest until my son Mehdi comes and avenges this blood which has been shed. Not just his blood, all of the blood of Ahl al-Bayt, the blood of Ali Asghar, the blood of Muhsin, of all of them. Where is the one who will avenge Karbala? Where is that son who will come? When he comes, he'll avenge not only Abu Abdullah, he'll avenge Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, he'll avenge every member of this family who has suffered, every single one of them. Let's raise our hands in dua and say, Ya Allah, for the sake of this family and their suffering, hasten the reappearance of Imam Zamana alayhi salam. Ya Allah, there is no end to the suffering of the Ahl Bayt and their lovers. Let the time be soon that we can avenge that suffering of Imam Zamana alayhi salam. And Ya Allah, until that time comes when the Imam alayhi salam comes, let us continue to hold majalis and programs like this to keep the Fada al-Musaib alive of this family, inshaAllah.
Thank you so much, dear Sayyid. Before I come to my brother Imran to end this majalis of ours, this humble offering with the recitation of Anoha, whilst you were reciting, an incident which happened quite recently came to my mind, where I believe it was in the city of Qum or Tehran. The respected Maulana, the respected Sheikh says, I was reciting some of the Musibah of Lady Fatima, and I came off the mimbar and I saw there was a man sitting there who kept crying and kept crying. Even when they gave out the food and the tabarruk, that man did not move. He kept crying and crying. So I went up to him and I myself hugged him and said, my dear brother, which part of the Musibah made you cry like this? Why are you not stopping? And he said, oh respected Sheikh, I'm a doctor. But he said, I'm not an ordinary doctor. I specialize in bone treatment. He said, oh Sheikh, the part you recited, that Lady Fatima, as you've recited now, Lady Fatima's rib was broken. He says, if you break your finger, every time you move that finger, it hurts. He said, oh Sheikh, I can't fathom enough in words that every time Lady Fatima, because her rib was broken, every time she would breathe, how much pain was she in for those 75 or those 90 days after Rasulullah. With this in mind, I would like to request my dear brother my dear brother Imran Datu to please come forward and recite Anoha.
So this one's been requested to do Anoha in English, so we'll end in that inshallah. And inshallah you guys can recite it as well. O Sayyida Zahra, O Sayyida Zahra, O Sayyida Zahra, O Sayyida Zahra. Together inshallah. O Sayyida Zahra, O Sayyida. How much grief and pain did you withstand? How did you push the door with your bare hand? How did they treat the daughter of Nabi? What did they do to the wife of Ali? Oh, Sayyida Zahra,
O Sayyida Zahra, O Sayyida Zahra, O Sayyida. Your little baby Muhsin Ali was denied his innocent destiny. In between the wall and the holy door, there was Zahra, whose ribs remain no more. Oh, Sayyida Zahra, oh, Sayyida Zahra, oh, Oh Sayyida Zahra, baby Muhsin was killed before he talked. He was martyred before he learned to walk. He didn't even get the chance to see his mother's pure and honorable beauty. Oh Sayyida Zahra, O Sayyida Zahra, O Sayyida Zahra, O Sayyida. Oh, the world, wake up to this tragedy. This was the killing of the son of Ali. This was the start to all the grief to come. What to do as Hassan Hussein watched on. Oh, Sayyida Zahra, oh, Sayyida Zahra, oh, Sayyida Zahra, oh, say. One last time with your loudest voice. Oh, Sayyida Zahra, oh, Sayyida Zahra. Al-Fatiha.
With that in mind, I would like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this tawfiq, as well as our dear respected guests here today. From my right, our dear respected Mullah Rashid Haider, our dear brother Imran Datu. On my left, my dear respected Sayyid Abbas Farshuri, as well as our dear respected Sayyid Misam Ali. For their efforts, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase their tawfiq and further His blessings upon them all. We also encourage our dear viewers watching this to hold further majalis and further ceremonies honouring the tragedy and this great personality, which is Lady Fatima. Indeed, we'd not even scratch the surface, as they would say. There were many aspects we have left out to another day, but we endeavour that inshallah in your gatherings you will make up for our shortcomings. Inshallah, until next time, on behalf of our respected guests here today, the team here at Safiya TV, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.